You know the champion in the grill. But what about the family he raised? 5 sons with the same name, a grill that sold 100 million units, and a tragedy no family should carry. One brother jumped from reality TV star to politician. A sister quietly runs some of the biggest shows you've seen. This isn't your average celebrity family, it's the Foremans. And where are they now? 5 sons, 1 name, George Edward Foreman, means you're born into expectations you didn't ask for, and there's nowhere to hide when you fall short. To keep the household from turning into a roll call, the champ issued nicknames: Junior, Monk, Big Wheel, Red, and Little Joey. The 7 daughters, including 2 adopted later, carved their own lanes entirely. This isn't a typical family tree. It's a dynasty with pressure baked in. And the first to face that pressure head-on was the oldest son, George Jr. Tasked with proving the name could mean more than boxing gloves and an infomercial smile. Could he carry the brand into a different arena, or would the weight of George Foreman carry him? When you're the first son of George Foreman, the script seems pre-written. Gloves on, lights up, follow the legend. George Foreman Jr. tore that script in half. He didn't chase knockouts. He chased distribution, margins, and market share, knowing full well that if he missed, the Foreman name wouldn't just lose a fight, it would become a punchline. That's real pressure. Prove the brand can win without the belt. He stepped straight into the family's bold reinvention, the George Foreman Grill, where the stakes were brutally simple. Either turn a quirky countertop idea into a mass-market staple, or watch your father's second act fizzle. The hook was genius, tilted, fat-draining fast. But genius doesn't ship units. Someone had to make the machine hum. Ad buys, retail slots, returns, inventory, demos that landed in 30 seconds or less. That someone, more often than people realize, was George Jr. As a senior marketing exec at Salton Inc., he wasn't just riding the wave. He was timing it. Infomercials didn't magically print money. They required ruthless testing, live shopping sprints, and tight creative that welded the product to George Sr.'s comeback story. Power, simplicity, a healthier plate. Every booking, every on-air line, every end cap was a bet with the family name on it. Get it right, and Saturday night TV turned into Monday morning sellouts. Get it wrong, and the brand bled. By the early 2000s, the numbers told the story. Over 100 million grills sold worldwide. That's not a fad. That's cultural staple. The grill moved from novel gadget to household default, and the Foreman smile became shorthand for easy wins in the kitchen. But here's the part nobody glamorizes: living in the shadow while protecting the shine. George Jr. had to say no as often as yes. No to bad extensions, no to off-brand cash grabs, no to anything that diluted the promise his father put on screen. He had to balance 2 versions of Foreman: the warrior who took belts and the neighbor who sold you a faster dinner. One misstep, and the whole identity buckled. So did he fight? Absolutely, just in a different ring. His opponents were missed forecasts, skeptical retailers, and the law of diminishing returns. His weapons were positioning, story, and relentless execution. And in that arena, George Foreman Jr. did what the name demands. He won. Still, salivating over grilled cheese and perfectly cooked steaks wasn't going to define George Jr. forever, and he knew it. Once he proved he could turn name recognition into real momentum, he walked straight back toward the roar of the arena, but on his terms. In 2013, alongside brothers Monk and Big Wheel, and with Big George lending muscle, he launched Foreman Boys Promotions. That move wasn't nostalgia, it was strategy. Promoters don't get cut, but they do bleed if a card tanks, a prospect fizzles, or a TV partner loses faith. To lower the risk, they linked up with Bob Arum's Top Rank, a heavyweight in the business of delivering main events. Smart. If you're going to replant the Foreman name in boxing soil, you do it where the lights are brightest and the pipelines are real. George Jr. called promotion a team sport, and that's exactly right, and exactly why it's hard. You're juggling egos, matchmaking, marketing, dates, venues, broadcast asks, and a dozen ways for a good night to go sideways. He didn't need to swing, he needed to build a platform where other fighters could. That's a different kind of courage. Take the blame when the crowd boos and the quiet win when a prospect breaks through. For a man who had long chosen to stay outside the ropes, promotion was a way of circling back to the arena in a new role, one that fit his strengths. Then he did something most legacy kids never manage. He stepped even further from the shadow. Technology and media became his own ring. As owner and chief strategy officer of Ion 360, he focused on tools that reshape how stories are captured and shared. Video, interactivity, smarter hardware and software working in sync. The playbook? Marry presentation with purpose. He said the best lessons came from watching his father work the camera on those infomercials. Humor, sincerity, clarity, now translated into a digital era where attention is a knife fight. And still, it doesn't stop there. He moved into making the stories themselves, executive producing projects that extended the Foreman footprint beyond belts and burgers. The through line is obvious: expand the brand, protect the promise, and keep evolving before the audience moves on without you. Of course, the Foreman name cuts both ways. That being said, George Jr.'s life hasn't been all smooth sailing. The pressure of being a foreman comes with scrutiny. Critics love the nepotism label, easy to slap on, hard to peel off. George Jr. didn't run from that pressure, he managed it. If the name opens a door, what you do after you walk in is on you. And he stayed in rooms where results, not last names, decide who gets invited back. What matters most is that he kept doing the work, studying marketing, creating partnerships, launching ventures, even when critics thought he was just cashing in on what his father had built. That discipline is why his story resonates beyond just being the son of George Foreman. So did he live up to the expectations that comes with being the firstborn son of a man whose name is forever tied to boxing greatness? Or did he forge something entirely different? Maybe the answer is both. He guarded the legacy and grew it, without pretending he threw the punches that created it. But not every foreman chose to play outside the ropes. The next son took the hard road back to the canvas, where the lights are harsher, the judgment is instant, and the consequences land. Monk's path wasn't brand maintenance, it was bruises, rounds, and battles that didn't end when the bell did. Imagine this: 5 brothers all with the same first and middle name. It's the kind of thing that makes people pause and say, "Wait, what? Why do it?" Foreman says it plain. So they always have something in common. If one goes up, then we all go up together. And if one goes down, we all go down together. Family wasn't decoration, it was the lifeline. And sure, Big George jokes that one name is easier to remember after wars with Ali and Frazier. Funny line. Heavy truth. But here's the tension. A shared name opens doors and locks you in a room with expectations. You're not just George, you're George Foreman again. Every introduction is a comparison test. Every win is "of course." Every stumble is "how could you?" Which brings us to the brother who decided to answer those expectations in the loudest place possible, the ring. George Edward Foreman, nicknamed Monk, didn't just carry the name. He chose to fight under the weight of it. George III, better known as Monk, represents perhaps the most direct way the Foreman name extended into the next generation of boxing. Same face, same frame, same first and middle name, and the same giant in his corner. But Monk didn't try to be a carbon copy of Big George. He stepped into the ring to prove he could fight, then had the audacity to reframe what being a foreman could mean. He took the family's boxing DNA and spun it into a brand, a business, a culture, turning ringcraft into a modern training movement for regular people who wanted a piece of that championship grind. In other words, he used the pressure like a heavy bag, absorbed it, redirected it, and hit back harder. Monk didn't tiptoe into the pros. He kicked the door off the hinges. When he turned professional in 2009, his camp built what the Foremans called the torture chamber, dragging a jeep across scorched pavement, splitting heavy logs until the axe rang in his wrists, grinding through sadistic circuits designed to crack anyone who didn't truly want it. It wasn't cute. It was old school, ugly work, the kind that made sense if your last name is Foreman. It echoed the kind of hard training George Foreman Sr. used in his own heyday, a reminder that becoming a fighter was never supposed to be convenient. That base paid off. He racked up win after win, originally retiring with an undefeated 16-0 record before stepping away from the sport. Then, years later, in 2024, he came roaring out of the quiet and sharpened that mark to 18-0, 17 by knockout. You can nitpick opposition all you want, but power is real or it isn't, and his was very real. Those numbers ruled out the just a name theory. He wasn't a novelty act riding his father's shadow. He could separate opponents from their senses. But even a perfect record doesn't silence the fight that happens after the bell. Away from the cameras, Monk drifted toward 300 pounds and into a depression that forced a brutal question. Was he chasing the ring, or was the ring chasing him? The grind, the constant comparisons, the expectation to be a clone of a heavyweight legend. None of that shows up on BoxRec, but it can break your timing just the same. Here's the turn that defined him. In interviews, Monk admitted he felt the pull of the gym more than the roar of the crowd. Teaching landed different. He started to see the real win as transferring that fighter's engine, discipline, resilience, the ability to push when your lungs lie to you, into regular lives. Out of that came Everybody Fights, the boxing-inspired gym brand he co-founded. The idea was clean and potent. Take the architecture of a fight camp, bag rounds, mitt work, conditioning blocks, mindset drills, and give it to anyone who wants to get better, not just pros. You don't need ring walks or TV lights to build a fighter's backbone. You need structure, community, and a place to test your will at 5 a.m. before the world wakes up. That's where Monk separated himself. He kept the Foreman fire but re-aimed it. In the ring, he proved he could punch. Outside it, he proved he could build. And that choice, evolution over imitation, might be the most Foreman thing he could have done. Everybody Fights offered much more than a heavy bag or a pair of gloves. Monk built a full-on training ecosystem. Classes fused high-intensity intervals with real boxing mechanics, then layered in weightlifting, yoga, and conditioning. You didn't just learn to snap a jab or slip a right hand. You stepped into a repeatable system of discipline that welded athletic training to everyday life. Monk repeated one central idea. Being a fighter wasn't necessarily about slamming your fists into an opponent. It was about facing whatever battles life placed in front of you. That message landed because it was earned. People didn't listen to him as a rerun of his father. They listened because his resume read like theirs in a harsher font. He had lived through the peaks of athletic success and the lows of weight gain and depression. His transition from fighter to coach wasn't abstract. It was the same shift many of his clients were hoping to make in their own ways, from struggle to strength. Because of that, Everybody Fights didn't just grow. It resonated. Then he changed gears again. In 2020, Monk stepped away from Everybody Fights and set his sights on a cleaner, sharper version of the vision. A year later, he launched Craft Boxing Club in Los Angeles, boxing at the core, new layers everywhere else. Craft kept the punch-by-punch training and lifestyle support, but added the Craft Boxing Academy to certify instructors in his method. Translation: he wasn't just building gyms, he was building a network of teachers who could carry his philosophy far beyond any single location. The goals aren't small. Monk talks openly about scaling the model nationwide, even imagining hundreds of locations one day. Just as his father turned a boxing career into a household product with the George Foreman grill, Monk envisions taking the structure of boxing training and spreading it to the wider culture, not as combat, but as a vehicle for personal change and healthier living. By reframing boxing as discipline, community, and transformation, he is working to raise it into one of America's premier sports, and raise its reputation and accessibility in one move. There's a neat symmetry here. The George Foreman grill promised leaner meals at home. Monk sells the other half of that equation: sweat, structure, and the body doing honest work. Both projects are about reinvention, taking the intensity that built a champion and repackaging it for real life. That arc is Monk's answer to the weight of his last name. Instead of getting trapped in comparisons, he rewrote the job description. Less about belts, more about better lives. His clubs, his curriculum, his story, each says the quiet part out loud. Most fights aren't under lights. They're the ones you win against yourself. And while Monk turned boxing into a wellness movement, the Foreman story doesn't run in a straight line. The next brother, George IV, Big Wheel, took that famous name into entirely different arenas. Television first, and then, unexpectedly, politics. George Foreman IV, known by his nickname Big Wheel, crafted a path unlike any of his siblings by stepping into both entertainment and politics. His journey wasn't about continuing his father's career in sports or marketing. It was about testing himself in front of the public in entirely different arenas. His first taste of national attention came on the reality competition series American Grit, hosted by John Cena. The show placed contestants through punishing tests of endurance and teamwork, and Big Wheel proved competitive enough to finish in 7th place. While he didn't win, the experience gave him something equally valuable: confidence, public recognition, and a national platform to show he had the drive to stand on his own. That national platform quickly became the springboard for something more serious. Not long after his time on American Grit, Big Wheel announced an independent run for Congress in Texas's 18th congressional district. For many, this seemed like an unexpected turn, but for him, the move represented a commitment to public service and civic leadership. He wasn't running as a celebrity chasing attention. He ran on a platform that addressed real concerns in his community. Big Wheel's campaign focused on 4 main areas: workforce and youth opportunity, small business and economic growth, public safety and community trust, and improvements in health, wellness, and infrastructure. He repeatedly stressed creating meaningful opportunities for young people, believing that access to education and job training could transform futures. His call to strengthen small businesses echoed the spirit of entrepreneurship that ran through his family, empowering others to build and manage something of their own. On public safety, he recognized Houston's unique challenges and proposed approaches that emphasized both accountability for law enforcement and trust with the communities they served. To support these positions, he didn't rely solely on his name. He carried with him a strong academic background, holding degrees in journalism and public administration from Texas Southern University. Beyond education, he had already built experience through work with organizations like the NAACP and the National Job Corps Association, where he engaged directly with policy and advocacy. That combination of education and experience allowed him to present himself as more than a famous son. It showed he understood how systems worked and how to advocate within them. His campaign also included a notable initiative: the TX-18 Education and Storytelling Initiative with the Library of Congress. The project aimed to give residents in his district direct access to valuable resources from the library, a concrete example of how he wanted to bring national tools into the hands of local communities. For an independent candidate without the backing of a major party, this initiative underscored substance and creativity, suggesting that his platform wasn't just talk, but designed to deliver results. Still, there's no denying the challenge of launching a campaign outside party lines. In a crowded congressional race, early polling showed he was sitting at about 4% support among likely voters. The number reflected the uphill battle any independent candidate faces when competing against deeply entrenched party infrastructure, rather than a lack of effort or seriousness. Running without the firm machinery of Democrats or Republicans behind him demanded a grassroots strategy and direct engagement with the residents, something he attempted to build through face-to-face outreach with small business owners and regular families. What makes Big Wheel's story compelling is how it fits into the larger Foreman family pattern of handling legacy. George Jr. leaned into business and branding. Monk transformed boxing into wellness and fitness. Big Wheel chose public service as his answer, embracing the family name not just as a reminder of past success, but as a tool for civic responsibility. He openly stated, "We each have a duty as Foremans to promote what we were given, which is our story." For him, that story wasn't meant to stop at the ring or the grill, but to extend into community leadership. Even though his congressional run faced steep odds, the attempt itself marked a clear statement about the kind of role he wanted to play. By stepping into politics, he risked public rejection in a high-profile way, but he also showed courage in using his recognition for something beyond entertainment. That determination reflects the same resilience his father demonstrated in coming back to boxing late in life, and the same discipline that threads through the entire Foreman family. Outside politics, Big Wheel explored other ventures to broaden his career. He was involved in marketing and licensing for Foreman family enterprises, and later moved into the agricultural sector, founding the Foreman Agricultural Service Company, which focused on investment in American farmland. This position fit neatly into the Foreman tradition of entrepreneurship, showing how he could balance business pursuits with public ambitions. Seen in total, his path tells us something larger about legacy. Some members of the Foreman family leaned on the name to build businesses. Others used it to inspire people. Big Wheel chose to wear it as a badge for public accountability, a symbol he hoped could carry over from personal achievement into community progress. In this way, he treated heritage not as a limit, but as a responsibility, one that required him to act, to participate, and to try shaping the future of the place he called home. And yet, while Big Wheel's choices placed him firmly in the public eye, not every one of George Foreman's sons felt compelled to share their journeys so openly. Two of his brothers, Red and Little Joey, made different decisions, trading attention and visibility for lives defined by privacy and quiet determination. Their stories show another side of what it means to carry the Foreman name. George Edward Foreman V, better known as Red, made decisions about his life that look very different from his brothers. While some Foreman sons built public careers in business, boxing, or even politics, Red preferred to stay connected to family ground. His choice was to work on the Foreman Ranch in Marshall, Texas, preserving a tradition that tied back to his father's roots before championships and endorsements changed everything. Caring for horses and cattle on that land may not attract interview requests or headlines, but it represents a deliberate way of carrying the family legacy through stewardship, continuity, and responsibility. At the same time, Red developed a quieter but equally important creative side. He built a life as a gospel singer and songwriter, expressing himself through music while keeping faith and artistry close to his family values. He and his wife, Ashley, are raising two children, RJ and Mackenzie, giving him a role as a husband and father that reinforces his focus on stability. His world, then, is not about chasing attention. It's about grounding a famous name in traditions that endure. Music and family combine with farm life to keep his legacy rooted firmly in community and faith. Even when Red connects with boxing, he does it with the same low-profile approach. Instead of entering the ring for pay-per-view events, he invests time in training amateur and professional boxers at the George Foreman Youth and Community Center, helping others find their footing while keeping his own profile modest. Social media posts occasionally show sparring moments with his brother George IV, but these glimpses feel less like brand building and more like family practice sessions. It's a way of staying close to the sport his last name represents, without surrendering to the constant comparisons or attention that often come with it. Red avoided the public spectacle, but he didn't avoid hard work or contribution. He simply chose to plant those efforts where they mattered most to him, within family, faith, and craft. His younger brother, George Edward Foreman VI, nicknamed Little Joey, took privacy even further. Of all the Foreman children, Little Joey is the least visible. Publicly, little is known about his professional life or personal endeavors. There are no regular media appearances, no known ventures promoted in his name, and no active social presence that allows outsiders a look at his daily world. That absence in itself is a choice. In a family surrounded by fame, where any son of George Foreman could easily step forward into the spotlight, Little Joey does the opposite. What's clear is that his low profile isn't accidental. Privacy can be as conscious a decision as any career path. By withholding his story from public curiosity, Little Joey created a space where identity isn't defined by the constant comparisons that often shadow children of celebrities. His life stands as proof that choosing not to engage with the attention doesn't mean there isn't substance behind the scenes. It simply means that the substance is personal, not available for public consumption. The contrast between Red and Little Joey illustrates one important point. Being a foreman doesn't lock you into one script. Red honors tradition openly, working the ranch that connects to family history, teaching in gyms that reflect his father's impact, and creating music tied to personal belief. Joey, on the other hand, writes his script silently, shaping a private life where meaning isn't measured by reputation. In both choices, the response to the Foreman name is clear. The name itself may be shared, but its meaning is flexible. When laid side by side with their more high-profile brothers, the pattern becomes sharper. George Jr. built ventures in marketing, technology, and branding. Monk carried the name back into boxing, then reinvented it through the fitness industry. Big Wheel campaigned in politics, spotlighting civic service. Red and Little Joey, however, followed the opposite path. They pushed away from visibility, crafting a different version of point and purpose. All five men share the same first and middle name, but the way they live under it is as different as possible. Red's life demonstrates that working the land, raising a family, and building music can be as much of a career as climbing ladders in sports or public service. Little Joey's near-total silence shows that withholding your story can actually say something powerful about control and independence. Together, they offer balance. Each Foreman's son provides an answer to the same problem. How do you live with a name tied permanently to someone else's legend? Viewed this way, the family picture grows larger and more complex. Fame, wealth, and legacy don't dictate one future for everyone under the Foreman roof. For some, those resources multiplied opportunity. For others, like Red and Little Joey, they created the freedom to avoid fame, to shape different identities, and to reject the idea that being public is required to have worth. The result is a set of stories that do not compete. They coexist, showing different reverberations of the same famous name. Red's work at the ranch, his music, his family role, combined with Little Joey's intentional privacy, reshape what it means to inherit visibility. They answer the question not by stepping onto stages, but by acknowledging that privacy itself carries value. They remind us that the Foreman legacy isn't just recorded in wins, businesses, or campaigns. It also lives in the choice to step away, raise children, protect family space, and preserve time beyond the headlines. Privacy for these younger sons isn't a withdrawal from responsibility. It's an act of direction. It shows that legacies can continue not only in public arenas, but also in quieter forms, away from cameras. That too is part of the cost and freedom of being a foreman. And with the sons' stories revealing such different ways of handling their shared name, the natural next question is this: what about the daughters? George Foreman has 7 daughters total, 5 biological and 2 adopted. Their lives paint a very different picture of the Foreman legacy when compared to their brothers. Where the sons often wrestled with the name directly, whether through boxing, business, or politics, the daughters shaped identities that stretched into media, education, wellness, and service, proving that legacy can unfold in many forms beyond the ring. Take Georgetta Foreman, for instance. While her brothers often dealt with spotlights and public attention, she built her reputation in production rooms. Georgetta has worked as a supervising producer for Allen Media, with credits on hit courtroom shows like We the People, America's Court, Divorce Court **. Then there's Frida Foreman, whose story carries both the courage of choosing familiar paths and the weight of stepping away from them. In the late 1990s, she pursued a boxing career, climbing into a profession that invited endless comparisons to her father. She fought at super middleweight, earning a solid 5-1 record with 3 knockouts. Her decision to compete wasn't merely athletic. It said she was willing to test herself in the harshest spotlight possible, under rules her father had once ruled. But boxing wasn't her long-term passion. Frida later moved into leadership as executive director of the George Foreman Youth and Community Center, a role that matched her father's deep commitment to offering second chances and building opportunities for young people. She placed her energy into guiding underprivileged kids, steering them toward stronger futures. In 2019, Frida died at the age of 42. Her passing ruled a suicide by the Harris County Forensic Institute. It was a loss that left her family and community stunned, and a sobering reminder of the mental and emotional challenges that can shadow even outwardly strong figures. But her impact, the youth she mentored, the lives she helped redirect, remains her true legacy. Leola Foreman's lane was humor and creativity. Known for her sharp timing and confidence on stage, she worked as a stand-up comic and content creator, often blending her own family story into her writing and delivery. Online, she produced material for YouTube. And in business, she became vice president of Foreman Media, blending entertainment with content leadership. Like her father, who mixed charisma with business opportunity, Leola found power in personality and voice, but she pointed hers toward comedy as both her craft and her career. Michi Foreman represents the other end of visibility. Based in Minneapolis, she has largely chosen privacy, appearing less in public channels and holding her personal life close. That said, she has occasionally spoken publicly, most notably with heartfelt comments following her father's passing in 2024, reflecting both her closeness to him and her ability to step into the public eye when needed. Still, Michi's decision is clear. Choosing privacy in the context of a very public legacy can itself be an expression of independence, reinforcing that not every foreman needed a national stage to define themselves. Adopted in 2009, Isabella Foreman, known online as Bella Nutella, chose to lean into digital space as a lifestyle blogger. Living in Sweden, she merges storytelling and humor through blogging and online media, showing how the Foreman presence can exist fluidly within the global, digital-first environment of today. Her work reminds you that legacy doesn't just mean carrying banners in sports or television. It can take shape in modern platforms miles away from where the story began. Courtney, adopted in 2012, took her identity into service work, pursuing training and clinical roles in mental health and nursing. In her career, she represents a focus on care, service, and accountability, qualities that tie back strongly to her father's ethos of helping people find stability no matter where they started. She demonstrates the same sense of responsibility that guided Foreman's establishment of the Youth and Community Center, but expressed through counseling and therapeutic care. Among the 7 daughters, Natalia Foreman stands out as an advocate for education, founder of Curriculum Queens, and today a project manager at Foster Club. Natalia holds a Master's of Science in Education, a background that strengthened her community and youth focus. Her work leans on curriculum and youth support, emphasizing leadership in spaces that prepare the next generation, not only for education, but for self-advocacy. In a family story often tied to boxing, power, and visibility, Natalia placed her energy where it could shape quieter, longer-lasting structures, curriculum, mentorship, and resources for kids who need them most. Together, these stories align around a single pattern. The daughters represent independence of choice within the Foreman legacy. Where some brothers leaned into the combat and commerce that came with a family name, the women took paths that used media, service, humor, education, or privacy as their cornerstones. Their responses to legacy were less about defending the name and more about writing their lives on their own terms, proving that identity can withstand and adapt under the weight of history. These choices also highlight something essential. Being a foreman doesn't guarantee wealth, perfection, or public comfort. It simply means carrying a legacy into whatever field you choose. For Georgetta, it meant shaping television. For Frida, it was athletic grit and community mentorship, even through struggle. For Leola, comedy. For Michi, privacy. For Isabella, online creation. For Courtney, mental health care. For Natalia, education. Each stands as evidence that heritage may start with one man's fists, but it can expand into countless roles. The daughters affirm that heritage isn't static, it evolves. Some acted in the public spotlight, some avoided it, and others transformed it into something new. What binds all of them together is not fame, but the ability to make decisions within a framework that could have easily consumed them. And that very tension between opportunity and burden, between carrying a name that brought both access and expectation, is what makes the larger Foreman story so compelling. Because when you look at the daughters alongside their brothers, a question comes into focus. What does carrying such a powerful family name really cost the people who live under it? Fame built on boxing gloves and late-night infomercials is one thing, but for the Foreman family, the real story has always been what it cost to live inside that powerful name. The Foreman name opened doors, but it also boxed some children into expectations that were hard to escape. The lessons drawn from their lives are not abstract. They're written in careers, struggles, recoveries, and even tragedies. One of the clearest case studies is Frida Foreman. She chose the path closest to her father's by putting on gloves and joining the professional ranks. In 2000, she stepped into the spotlight as a super middleweight, going 5-1 with 3 knockouts. Her choice wasn't about chasing headlines. It was about showing that she could compete sincerely in a sport where her surname already spoke volumes. But after a brief career, she left boxing and redirected herself to service, becoming executive director of the George Foreman Youth and Community Center. There, she mentored kids from disadvantaged backgrounds, passing on some of the very lessons of discipline and resilience she had inherited. For Frida, legacy wasn't only about fighting. It was about giving others a chance to build their own identities. But carrying a famous name doesn't erase personal battles. Behind her work and accomplishments, Frida wrestled with mental health challenges. In 2019, she died at age 42. Her death ruled a suicide. The impact shook her family and community deeply, but her life continues to speak. Frida demonstrated both the opportunities and the weight that come with such a name, how fame can amplify both triumphs and struggles. Her story is remembered not just for its ending, but for its pursuit, to claim her own space while still honoring her father's values of second chances. Another lens is George Foreman III, Monk. He had the look, the record, even the undefeated run that promised a long career. By 2012, he was 16-0 with 15 knockouts, later returning in 2024 and extending that to 18-0. Yet his training sessions, filled with images of hauling jeeps and chopping wood, told only part of the picture. Inside, Monk struggled with weight, depression, and nagging doubt about whether being the next George Foreman was ever a fight he wanted. Instead of letting health challenges consume him, he pivoted. Monk moved from competition into entrepreneurship. He co-founded Everybody Fights, a fitness chain built on the discipline of boxing but meant for everyday people. Later, he created Craft Boxing in Los Angeles, pairing gyms with structured educational academies for coaches. He redefined the sports culture, presenting boxing not as violence, but as personal resilience. Monk's shift represented a clear solution to the burden of his name, reinterpretation. By shaping boxing into something broader, he transformed the one thing that might have trapped him into something that freed him. George Foreman Jr. faced a different type of challenge. As the eldest son, the world expected him to carry a championship torch, but Jr. turned left into business. He worked behind the scenes of one of the most iconic products of its time, the George Foreman Grill. His marketing roles with Sultan Inc. helped sell more than 100 million grills worldwide in its first 25 years, cementing the household status of his father's smile and name. From there, Jr. co-founded Boxing Promotion Ventures and eventually launched into digital media and tech. With Ion 360, carving out his professional identity in strategy and innovation. His story is less about breaking away from his father and more about amplifying and modernizing the brand. He represents another model of response: embrace. Instead of rejecting expectations, he used them to build something sustainable of his own. These three case studies reveal the larger picture. Some Foreman children embraced visibility, some reinterpreted it, and some stepped away entirely. Big Wheel brought the name into politics and civic service. Red and Little Joey pursued privacy, with Red grounding himself in the family ranch and Little Joey almost disappearing from public life. The daughters diversified further, Georgetta producing TV shows like Asterisk Divorce Court Asterisk, Natalia pushing forward in education, Courtney working in mental health, Isabella in digital media. Embedded in these choices are recognizable survival strategies: embrace, reinterpret, retreat, or serve. And then there's George Foreman's family ethos itself, the idea that all rise, all fall together. For years, that philosophy had a physical home: the George Foreman Youth and Community Center in Houston. It housed after-school support, boxing classes, and community resources, echoing the Foreman belief in second chances. But even institutions meet hard reality. The center never recovered from the impact of COVID-19, and by mid-2024, its buildings were marketed for sale. The closure symbolized a turning point. Brick-and-mortar community work gave way to a broader, more adaptive approach. In its place stands the Foreman Charitable Foundation. Its mission is clear: uplift, protect and inspire others, especially young people, through mentorship and opportunity. Rather than confining itself to a local gym or building, the foundation adapts to a broader stage: education programs, mentorship networks, and faith-based initiatives. In this way, George Foreman's original values didn't vanish with the center's doors. They evolved into an institution designed to reach further. The foundation is both proof of legacy and acknowledgement of cost. Adapting is necessary when fame and resources shift. Through Frida's struggles and contributions, Monk's reinvention, Junior's entrepreneurial embrace, and the foundation's evolution, the central truth stands out. Fame may hand you a stage, but it doesn't tell you how to stand on it. For the Foreman children, solutions came in many forms: pursuing the public image, reinterpreting boxing into wellness, retreating to private grounds, or serving communities through media, education, and care. These responses are more than personal stories. They are strategies that anyone handling heritage, expectation, or public scrutiny might recognize. The cost of fame is not simply pressure. It is the constant question of whether to live inside, outside, or alongside a powerful reputation. For the Foremans, the answers highlight resilience. They embraced, shifted, retreated, or built new systems. And even when cost showed itself through struggles like Frida's or the closure of the Youth and Community Center, solutions were found in new directions. Most importantly, in the continuation of service through the Foreman Charitable Foundation. Taken together, this is a family that shows the double-edged truth of legacy. Every Foreman child had to make sense of the same name, yet each responded in a way that revealed possibility: a grill, a gym, a campaign, a gospel song, a school program. The diversity of paths strengthens rather than weakens the legacy, proving it can survive pressures as much as it celebrates victories. And the lesson is simple but sharp. Fame can give you recognition, but it also demands navigation. You can't inherit solutions, you have to create them. The Foremans did, each in their own way. Their different answers show not just the cost of a name, but the strategies that keep it alive. That leaves the final perspective, the one that steps back and looks at the family as a whole. Because what the Foremans ultimately offer isn't just individual choices, but a collective story of unity, adaptation, and endurance under pressure. Each success built credibility for the others, and each stumble became a collective lesson. If one George Foreman earned recognition in the ring or in business, then every George carried a version of that victory. And when one struggled, the family carried that too. It reflected their father's philosophy exactly: rise together, fall together, always together. This tension, unity versus individuality, sits at the heart of the Foreman children's stories. The name wasn't just a symbol of family. It was also a stage they couldn't exit. Every son had to climb onto it, whether they wanted to perform or not. For some, that stage was energizing. For others, it was too confining. What matters is that each made a decision about how to stand there, and in doing so showed the many ways a legacy can be lived. In the end, George Foreman's unconventional act of naming his sons the same was as much about philosophy as it was about practicality. It created a bond that couldn't be broken, a family tied together in name no matter what directions their lives took. But it also placed each child in a lifelong conversation with fame, expectation, and identity. For outsiders, it became a curiosity. For the Foreman brothers, it was the starting line for everything that came next. A famous name can be both a gift and a burden. For the Foreman children, that tension shaped everything. Some used it as a springboard, others as something to step away from entirely. And as George Foreman himself once said, "If one goes up, then we all go up together. If one goes down, we all go down together." That philosophy lives on, in the foundation, in the gyms, in the businesses, and in every quiet choice his children still make today. For boxing fans, that's the real lesson here. Legacy costs something. Each Foreman child had to decide how to carry it, whether through reinvention, retreat, or redirection. So which path surprised you the most? Or if you carried the Foreman name, which legacy strategy would you choose? Drop a comment. We'd love to know. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so we can keep making more content about the lives of boxing legends beyond the ring. See you in the next one.